I'm so excited to be here tonight. And I can tell you it's because I shouldn't be here tonight at all. I should be dead. I should be 6 feet under, pushing daisies. But I'm not, and it's because a generous heart saved my life. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about tonight. To start, though, I want to start right at the very beginning. 1978, right here in Sudbury, I was born. Even back then, I wasn't like most kids, or babies, I should say. I didn't move around like babies did, and I always puked up my milk. My mom was a young mother, first time, and she trusted the doctors. She said, "There's nothing wrong with me. I just had a flu, and you, ma'am, are overexcited." My mom put me to bed one night. Things have been getting worse and worse. That day, I barely moved at all, and I had glassy eyes. My mom went to sleep, and she woke up, and there, standing at the foot of her bed, was my great-grandmother. She had passed away a few years before. She warned my mom, "Take that kid to the hospital. He's not going to make it." So my mom brought me to the hospital. Turned out I have a condition called pyloric stenosis. I may have that wrong. I'm not a medical professional, but I could tell you what it is. My stomach didn't properly connect to my small intestine. I only had a pinhole. So when my mom switched me to Pablum, I was starving to death. I could tell you today I'm cured. But I could tell you how precious life is. Because if I was born in any other generation, short of a miracle, and I suppose you could say there was a miracle that night, I wouldn't be here. My family moved 19 times in 21 years. I could tell you from experience, a great school year is when you end the school year at the same school you started at. As a result, I was always struggling to make new friends, and I never built any lasting relationships. In grade 6, I was at Wannet Public School, and we went on a school trip. We went to McDonald's. My mom, bless her heart, couldn't afford to give me some money so I could have a Happy Meal, so she gave me a bag lunch. And I was there in a restaurant full of kids playing with their really awesome 1980s toys, watching them scarf down burgers, french fries, and chocolate sundaes, and I'm there with PB&J in shame. Well, a police officer happened to stop by, and he saw this little boy with his bag lunch, took pity on me, and he bought me a Happy Meal. It was awesome. But the most special thing that happened that day was that officer had planted the seed of a generous heart right here. When I was 16 years old, my mom and my dad split up, and I became lost. I didn't have guidance anymore. And shortly after that, I was diagnosed with depression and suicidal thoughts. In my early 20s, I made the decision I was going to end my life. I'll never forget that day. My uncle, who lives in Thunder Bay, had just happened on that day to come to Sudbury to get some groceries and visit my grandmother, who lived in the same apartment building as me. He called me. He said, "Kenny, can you come give me a hand to bring these groceries upstairs?" So I did. I spent some time with my grandmother, who helped raise me, and my uncle. And then I said goodbye to them for what I thought was the very last time. And I went downstairs to my apartment to end my life. Now, I'm not going to enable anybody by telling you what I did, other than to say the way it was supposed to work was you fall asleep and you never wake up. But in that moment, I thought about my uncle. I thought to myself, if I'm dead tomorrow, who's going to help my uncle bring down the groceries to his car? At that very moment, that seed that had been planted in my heart in grade 6 blossomed into a generous heart. And I stopped what I was doing. I have not entertained a suicidal thought since that day. Suicide is by nature very selfish. And selfish thoughts don't exist very well in a generous heart. That was almost 20 years ago. In that time, I become a husband, I become a father. I volunteered in all sorts of different organizations to help give back to the community. And I become a children's book writer. I write books for kids to help give them new ideas, good morals, so I didn't like the stories that my daughter was reading. My first story is about a little boy named Tommy. I'm going to share it with you tonight because I found out some profound things while I wrote this story. See, Tommy was a little boy, lives in a small town that heats their home with coal. Him and his parents don't have much, but what they do have is a love that they share for one another. 2 weeks before Christmas, Tommy's dad loses his job, and they only have enough coal to last until Christmas morning. So Tommy, being the good little boy that he is, decides he's going to sacrifice his gifts that year. And he's going to try and get on the naughty list so he can help his family heat their home with coal. Now, everything that Tommy does backfires because he is a good little boy. And he doesn't think he's going to make it until he comes up to old Mrs. Thomas's house, and there in the back is this shed with some paint buckets beside it. Tommy looks at that and he says, you know what? This is an opportunity. I'm going to paint some graffiti pictures on this shed. Everybody's complaining about graffiti. That's going to get me on a naughty list for sure. So he looks around, doesn't see anybody. Tommy makes his way to the shed, starts painting. But as he starts painting, he realizes he wants to paint something beautiful, not something ugly. So he paints and he paints and he paints. And when he's finally done, he stands back to look at his beautiful masterpiece. And standing right beside him is old Mrs. Thomas. She's got tears in her eyes and a huge smile. You see, she's been trying to get that shed painted for years. And here's this little boy who just came and painted it for her. What happens next surprises Tommy. He becomes celebrated in his small town as the boy who painted Mrs. Thomas's house. And everybody starts to paint each other's homes to celebrate how good Tommy is. I could tell you that Santa does bring Tommy coal, but not because he was bad, but because he was good, and because that's what he truly wanted. Now, when I wrote this story, I learned something quite profound. You see, at the beginning of the story, there's a picture of Tommy's town, and it's gray, drab, and dreary. Exactly what you'd expect from a town heated by coal, right? Well, at the end of the book, his town is a beautiful, colorful, vibrant place. I'm going to end with this. Every action that we take is a brushstroke. And in each one of our hearts is a different color of generosity. And only by coming together as a community do we have a full palette to paint a beautiful picture. You never know. It might save someone's life.